Most swimmers are struggling to get faster, and here's why. This is a rate limiting problem. This is the key thing that is holding swimmers back from getting faster times. Most swimmers are struggling to get faster, and they're just getting more tired. Last season at Lifetime Franklin, our swimmers averaged a 13.2% improvement across all of our events. Now, this was with our 14 and under team. And take this with a grain of salt. This is worked for our program. This is just using as an example of what you could possibly see in your program. Today, we're going to cover what our parents and coaches can do. Our parents, you're going to learn how to identify what's holding your kid back, what to ask your coach, and how to tell if your team is doing this type of work. For our coaches, we're going to give you a framework to prescribe this for your team, how to assess new swimmers, and how to actually track if this is working. Just swim more, most common piece of advice in age group swimming, and it is definitely the laziest. Yes, swimming more can help you swim better, but there's a more efficient way to do it. Moderate, non-specific exercise will never lead to high performance. It is the high end of that performance spectrum, those intense sets, those maximum velocity, those pace sets that's actually moving the needle, and doing lots of moderate, non-specific exercise will never help you get faster. This is the volume trap. This is where most coaches live. They expect swimmers' times to increase indefinitely as they increase volume, and there often is a spike in performance early, but you can't pull on that lever forever. You're going to have to pull on different levers to continue to see that improvement that you're looking for. Now, this is the basis of what we're talking about, the rate limiter. This is the single biggest thing standing between a swimmer and how to get them faster. Now, rate limiters differ for all swimmers. A 50 freestyler is not going to have the same rate limiter as a 400 IMer. Two kids that are going to swim the same event are probably going to have different rate limiters, and that rate limiter is going to change over the course of the season. A kid is not going to need the same type of work in October as what they're going to need in March. This is where most coaches live with dividing out their programming. They spend 90% of the time on general well-rounded training and actually only 10% on that one thing that's going to help get that kid faster. And that's the problem. There are several different rate limiters. These are just an example of what some common ones might be for specific events. The 50s and 100s often is going to be maximum velocity. 200 is going to be your speed capacity, how long you can maintain that high level of speed across the whole 200. And then your distance events, your 400 plus, your 400 IM is often going to be your lactate clearance and then pacing of those specific events. These are just examples of the super common rate limiters, but it's going to differ, like I said, based on the individual swimmer and the time of year that you're in. Now, for most of the events in swimming, which are 200 and down, maximum velocity is often going to be the rate limiter, especially for kids that have high goals. For example, if a swimmer wants to break a minute in the 100 freestyle, they have to be able to average 15 seconds across all of the 25s. And if their maximum velocity isn't significantly above that 15 seconds, they're literally not going to be able to accomplish that goal. So our goal as coaches should be able to raise that maximum velocity ceiling so that their speed reserve is much higher and they'll be able to maintain that pace across all of the 25s much easier. As a reminder, these defaults are just starting points. Deciding what the rate limiter for your team and each individual swimmer is where the real coaching happens. How we identify rate limiters at Lifetime. We do numerous test sets. There is generally some sort of time set that is what I consider a test set at every practice. We're going to look at the way that the kids split their races. Everybody is different on how they split, but by looking at how they split their races, we're going to be able to identify, is speed their rate limiter, is endurance their rate limiter, is pacing strategy their rate limiter, and looking at the splits is a really good way to try to identify that. Then we're also going to look at video review. This is a really good way to look at the deficiencies in the stroke. We can slow it down, break it down frame by frame, and that way we have a visual representation of what a rate limiter might be. We also use technology like EO Swim Better, where we can get a really solid look at how forces are being applied in the stroke to identify if the rate limiter is a stroke mechanical issue. This is an example of looking at the splits where an ideal split on the top for a example swimmer, and then what the swimmer actually is splitting and identifying where those deficiencies might be. And once again, identifying the rate limiter is just one step. You're going to have to then look at your training and how you're going to adjust that training for that individual to address that rate limiter. So technology is a huge help. Using EO Swim Better, we can look at the force, real numbers in real time on exactly where the force is being applied, whether there's asymmetry between the left and the right, specifically how much time is being spent in the catch, pull, recovery, all measured to the hundredths of a second. This technology is really helpful with identifying the rate limiting KPIs for swimmers. We track everything. So we might have a swimmer whose maximum velocity is at a certain point, and we're going to track that over time and look at the improvement. If we're not tracking it, it's going to be really hard to determine whether our training is actually having an impact on those rate limiting KPIs. So definitely pick something. I like to pick maximum velocity, whether that's through a 25 dive time or a 15-meter dive time, whatever works best for your training program. But this is how we do it, and we track it inside of a software. This is an example of 5 swimmers that were on our team recently, across different genders and different ages, and different amounts of time in our program. We had some relatively new swimmers, swimmers A and B, who've been on our team for 6 months. Swimmers C and D have actually only been on our team for about a month. And then swimmer E has actually been with the program since we started it. Like I said, a lot of the time, maximum velocity is going to be the rate limiter, and that was the case here. And then we had one swimmer where just technical proficiency was their rate limiter because they were very new to the sport. They started in the sport 18 months ago, and so the huge focus for them was just technical improvement. Looking at swimmer A here, we looked at, they were on a different team, and they wanted to be able to qualify for Southeasterns. And the main issue with them is they just weren't physically fast enough. So our entire season around them being on our team was focusing on how can we get from the dive to 25 faster. And that was across freestyle and butterfly for this individual. This individual ended up dropping nearly 10 seconds in the 50 fly and 17 seconds in the 100 fly. And the 50 fly is where they ended up qualifying for Southeasterns. Then swimmer B. Swimmer B is actually the sister of swimmer A. Once again, they were on a high volume program, came to us, and we wanted to significantly increase their speed because it was something that was lacking in their stroke. And they were mainly a breaststroker, and they ended up dropping 15 seconds in the 100 breast, and then 9 seconds in the 50 breast, and nearly made the Southeastern qualifying time in that as well. Now, swimmers C and D have actually only been on our team for about a month at the time of recording, and they just swam their first meet with us, and we've done nothing but focusing on max velocity with these 2 swimmers. And the first swimmer dropped almost 1.5 seconds in the 50 fly, and then the other swimmer dropped 3/10 in the 50 fly. And like I said, we've done nothing but focus on just getting them from one end of the pool to the other faster. And then swimmer E, this is our technical person. About 18 months ago when they started swimming, they could barely, if at all, do legal breaststroke. And so our whole focus of the season was getting them legal in the 50 breaststroke and then increasing their speed. But 95% of the work done by this individual was trying to improve the technical proficiency. And they went from, in 2025, going 1 minute in the 50 breaststroke to qualifying for Southeasterns and going a 42.4 and finishing in the top 16 in the LSC. The rate limiter is whatever it is. It's not the flashy thing, it's not the comfortable thing, it's the actual constraint of making the swimmer faster. If you can't measure it, you do not know if it's working. You have to pick a metric, whatever that metric is, and it has to be trackable because you will have no idea on whether you're actually addressing the rate limiting KPI if you're not able to actually track that metric. Now, we track everything in the software. Our kids can log in and look at their improvements across different metrics, whether that's time, stroke rate, and all of that stuff. We store that in our software. And then the coaches can look at this as well, and they get to track also those metrics, but also it's a really easy way to visualize improvements um, on specific sets, but also their best times overall as well. Now, if I was a parent, these are questions I would ask the coach. I would ask, what is holding my kid back right now? What is my rate limiter? They're probably not going to know what you're talking about. Also ask how much time you're actually spending on it. The majority of time should actually be spent on whatever this rate limiter is. And then ask them, how do you know if my kid is improving at it? Are they actually tracking it? This is hugely important. And then now, as a coach, audit. How much time are you actually spending on your rate limiting KPIs? If you're not spending and you don't know what those are, first thing, identify what those are. 2, specialize. Bias the majority of your work, especially early in the season, towards that. You want to spend the longest amount of time on the things that are actually going to make you faster. Track. Pick a metric and track it. Whatever that is for your team, it could be endurance based, it could be sprint based, whatever it is, pick something, track it over time. It can change over time. And then number 4, cut out the things that aren't working. Because you're tracking, you will be able to actually cut out the things that are not actually moving the rate limiting forward. Now, to bring everything together, remember, as coaches and parents, we want to identify the rate limiting KPI, we want to train the rate limiting KPI, and we want to track it. That's it. That's the whole thing. Now, I'm new to this recording. I appreciate you guys. If you watch the whole video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.